for trying to prevent Muslim people from entering this country, it wasn't until that case that they said, we made a mistake. So this is like the thing, right? And a lot of times, the Asian American advocates who have been part of changing the world aren't talked about in our schools. Fred Korematsu, Lau, who made ESL possible, Tape, the people who did the first case against segregation, right? Like, they're not talked about, and that's a problem. Oh, what's the last thing? Oh, yes, okay. Asian American students in New York made it so that January 30th, mark your calendars, is Fred Korematsu Day. So every year from now on, Fred Korematsu Day is on January 30th to honor them. And Asian American students advocated for that because they said, our history matters, our resistance matters, you need to talk about how we've been part of this. Okay, oh, I love Bayard Rustin. Has anybody heard of Bayard Rustin? Anybody Bayard Rustin? Okay, so it just is like, what the, were you learning? Right?
It's all American history, but has never been mentioned in an American history class.
Like they talk about certain groups, but they talk most majority of the white people how they, created America.
Exactly. Or and this is a thing that our students have talked about a lot, is like Black history didn't start with slavery. Why is that's not the, like, if the only way that you know about your people is through the eyes of what white people did in relation to your people, that's fucked up too. Sorry, I keep cursing. But like, it is, right? Like, there's a whole history before that needs to be talked about. There's a present that needs to be talked about, right? All of that is not in the conversation. So Bayard Rustin, he's amazing. Okay, so y'all know that I have a dream speech. Okay, impactful. MLK is soon. MLK Day is soon. So I have a dream. We all like have seen it, inspired by it, right? But you know when he's giving that speech and you pan out onto the mall in DC and you see so many people? You know what I'm talking about? Like, so many people were there listening to him. MLK didn't get those people there. Bayard Rustin got them there. Bayard Rustin was the organizer who organized that march, who got thousands and thousands and thousands of people from around the country to come to DC on that day. And remember when we talked about that march, the boycott that students did of their schools, where almost 500,000 students didn't go to school to boycott segregation here in New York City? Bayard Rustin organized that. So this is like an incredible, incredible person, incredible organizer. And he served time in prison for refusing to register for the army because he was a pacifist. He was also a gay Black man. And he was part of the freedom rides to challenge segregation on interstate buses. And he was one of the founders of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Now the complicated part, you were talking about how oftentimes we don't talk about the women of the Black Panthers or the Young Lords, right? And that was a real challenge. There were some things about how women in the movement weren't being supported or uplifted, right? And that's at the intersections, right? When we had to deal with like the complicated history. Part of the complicated history is that because he was gay, a lot of people tried to turn him away. And they wouldn't let him be at the front of the movement because they didn't want a gay person. And he was someone who was unwilling to not say it. You know, some people were like, well, just don't talk about it. He was like, no, that's who I am. And at that time, in the 50s, it was incredibly, incredibly brave. There's actually a podcast that I think is coming out tomorrow that has recordings of him talking about it. And it's so beautiful. He talks about this story about when he was on a segregated bus. And he was being made to go to the back of the bus. And a little child, a little white child, reached out to like touch something shiny on him. And you know the way that a child will, right? And his mother pulled him back. And in that moment, Bayard Rustin knew, I need to show that child that I do not accept the idea that I need to go to the back of this bus. And he got arrested that day. And what he said is, that was how he felt about talking about being gay. Is that how could he do to himself the injustice that was happening in the world, right? It's just so powerful. He really, really inspires me. Linda Brown, this is like, we talk about Brown versus Board of Education, but that Brown, that means something. That was a person and a family, right? And so she was a schoolgirl who, like many, wanted to desegregate schools. And she and her two young sisters had to walk across railroad tracks and take a bus, like literally 4 miles, to go to grade school, even though there was a white school that was like down the block. So every day, right, like think about the commute, right, every day going there and coming back, every single day, when just around the corner there was a school that she wasn't allowed to go to. And their fundamental argument was, like, the state can't make a school and prevent me from going to it, right? Now think back to those screens that are saying, like, some of you can't go to this school, right? How far have we really come? But she, at a young age, saw her father fight for school desegregation in this movement, and she became inspired. She wanted to be part of this work. After the landmark win, she actually became a public speaker to continue inspiring people, and she passed away recently. And so we're really thinking a lot about last year, about like how do we honor her commitment and her legacy, right? Because like we've been talking about, so many people have stood in the face of injustice to make change, and some things have changed, and we know that we have to keep doing that work. Okay, also, so in 1969, 5 students from UCLA created a newspaper called Gidra. So they each actually put in their own money to create this because they wanted to have full control because they were at a college, but they didn't want the college to be able to say, like, this is what you can say, this is what you can't say. So this was during the Vietnam War, and so these Asian American students were actually running pieces about Vietnam, about the drug crisis among Japanese American youth, and it had like recipes and poetry, right? Like it was like this magazine that the students created. But what's really interesting, what I've learned, is that at the time, Asian American was actually being created as like a political identity. You know how like Black is like a political identity now? Like it has to do with, yes, your background, but it also like can be saying like Black Lives Matter, like I'm part of that, right? Asian American, everybody was from different countries. Asian literally includes like 46 countries, something insane, right? So everybody had different experiences, but they were saying, no, even though I know that I'm Korean and you're Japanese and he's Cambodian, in the eyes of the government, in the eyes of the people in our community, in this society, we're being treated the same way. And in fact, we're being lumped together like we're all the same, right? And so they started to create this idea of we're gonna be Asian Americans, and we're gonna take pride in that, and we're gonna build together. Because even though you're from Cambodia, I'm from China, and he's from Pakistan, like we're gonna start to like see each other as collaborators for justice. And so they actually shined light on racism against Asian Americans and stood in solidarity with the Black Power and Chicano movements, believing that Asians could only achieve equality if racism against all minorities was ended. And that's really like this idea of like, if I'm not free, you're not free, right? And like, how do we actually stay committed to our people and to each other? So basically, we want people to learn that stuff in school. Yeah, do you want to?
I noticed that one person's name wasn't on the last movie bridge. I don't know if you ever heard of it. And I feel like she did a lot. Because she was just a 6-year-old. She was put in a classroom by herself. She was trained. I think she was the first African American to enter the school after Brown versus Board. So I feel like she did contribute a lot. And we can really talk about her that much. And I feel like it's not great because she did contribute to segregation.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing her name into the space. Absolutely. Is there anybody else that you all know about that you think is important that people should learn more about? Right.
Because they said that we can't use her because they don't understand that people easily available. But it seems that she thinks the things that we start to get overshadowed. I feel like it's not that.
Totally. And by the way, like I say, Bayard Rustin was arrested for not going to the back of the bus, but he doesn't get like, we don't talk about him like we talk about Rosa Parks. The thing is that Rosa Parks was not like some, like old lady who was just tired. That's not what happened. She was an organizer. She knew they had been planning it for a long time because you're right, they knew that other people, they were too complicated. If Bayard Rustin got arrested, he was gay, and then that was like, oh, complicated. If she got arrested and they tried to build a movement around her, it's like, oh, she's a rebellious teenager, right? Not that that's right, they both should have been able to sit where they wanted, I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is the organizers were like, okay, who are we gonna get arrested that will help us tell the story to the world? And Rosa Parks looked like a nice old lady, right? But she wasn't even old. She was actually very young at the time. But like that's what she looked like, and they knew that. And so they planned. She was part of the planning. They sat and they planned the date. Think about this, because you know how the boycotts happened? They started boycotting the buses. When Rosa Parks was arrested, they started boycotting the buses. They said they were not going to use the buses. And thousands and thousands and thousands of black people didn't use the buses. They had to plan that. They didn't just wake up and be like, oh, that didn't go well, what are we gonna do now? They planned all of that. They knew that's what they were gonna do. They wanted something to gather people's attention so that they could show up and that's the work that we do as organizers. We're literally gonna have a meeting about it on Friday, is what do we do this year, right? To actually bring attention to this issue. Okay. And the thing about relationships is that we want that all schools are considerate and empathetic of identities of all students and focus on the power of different backgrounds and act to build relationships between students across group identities.
So, does everybody know who that man is? Chancellor Richard Carranza. He is the Chancellor of New York City's Department of Education. He is new in office. He got there like last year. He's really, really dope. I'm really, really excited that we're going to be working with him. Yes?
I actually did a research on him, and I thought that was my first son. So he was planning on desegregation.
Yeah, he's been to Texas, San Francisco. He's gone around the country and has been working on desegregating schools. So he's in New York City. New York City has the largest public education system in the entire country. In the entire United States of America. Like really, really think of that. We have the largest public school system. So as the largest public school system, the city, he wants the city to spend $23 million for anti-bias training for public school educators, right? So that means the teachers, including I think you even include staff and administration, but just to have that anti-bias training, because we already know some teachers. Yeah.
Then we have restorative justice. There are 5,500 NYPD school safety division personnel, but only 2,800 full-time guidance counselors and 1,250 full-time social workers. Like, come on, why do we have more cops than people that can actually help us? Who are we going to turn to when we have a problem, when we feel unstable? Are we going to turn to a cop that can't even get us worse sometimes? The students at schools with metal detectors get scanned 16,400,520 times per year, and only dangerous items are found for every 23,000 scans. Imagine, in like snow, you have to take off your boots, you have to take off like your belts, jacket, and then like, why? Why do those kids have to go through that?
I just want you guys to really look at those numbers again, because that's a lot, right? Like this is a scan, this is a scan, this is a scan. Going through the metal detector is a scan. Like those are all scans. I've seen like students they make them take off their shoes, like Rosie said, where there are like 5 schools in a building and all of those kids have to go through that one metal detector. Right, so really think about how students are going to school every day and how they are being criminalized every single day.
Black and Latinx students are 3 times more likely to walk through metal detectors than white students, and 43% of ELL students are scanned every day.
Well, why is that's for a reason, though. That's the reason why.
Right, but
It's debatable because students, 5 students bring knives to school, they bring guns to school.
but also,
And sometimes it could be granted, prevented because we see across the nation different things that are happening in different schools. I wish that they had some scanners in my school, they don't have that. Basically, it's just scanning cards and that's it, but it's like, you never know if that's the day when the wrong person is coming into the school. You just don't know, so why wait until something, happens? That's why we have certain.
But do you believe that I totally agree that it is a debatable thing. But is it really the metal detector that is ensuring safety in the school? Is it the physicality of this metal thing that I walk through that, oh, okay, I'm safe, the entire school is safe, right? Like it's not necessarily like this metal detector that I'm going through that just makes it safe and doesn't ensure that my school is safe. Yeah.
I'm gonna say it's all the time, but it's like all the time you see in the news say if some like school or high school or college being shot, the majority of the whites that and then they don't really have no detectors, and then the police there who were supposed to be watching and making sure they didn't do anything or make sure.
Yeah. And like I've been to white public schools my entire life. I have never walked through a metal detector. Never. Right? And my school was always safe. We have never had a shooting, we have never had a stabbing, we have never had any of that, right? Because we are not going to school to be criminalized. We know that we're not going to walk through a metal detector. We know that NYPD isn't going to harass me in the school. I know that when I go to school that I'm not going to be targeted. But when you know that you're going to be targeted, when you know you're going to be walking through a metal detector, when you know that NYPD is going to be on your ass the whole time, that's where a lot of rebellious things come into place, right? And it's kind of like a trigger. And like even a lot of times, like I know students that would bring like weapons to school, but they would never really hurt the student in the school building. It's more like, oh, I got a knife, like to show off, right? Or like sometimes it's gang related things, right? But it doesn't necessarily happen in the school building. They're like, oh, I'll get you outside. We'll fight outside. This will happen outside. And the metal detector is not going to ensure you being safe outside or not, right? Outside is a whole different thing, but in the school building, like that metal detector is not going to necessarily ensure my safety. Just so like,
So, black students are 4 times more likely to be suspended than their white peers. And 90% of summonses and arrests are given to black and Latinx students. It's like, wow, that's a big question. Why are we getting all the summonses and
Can I just say one thing real quick?
yeah.
Because if you think, right, oh, well, it must be the black and Latinx kids that are doing the things that should be suspended. They actually have done studies researching in New York City schools to show that white kids do the same thing and don't get punished, or they don't get punished as severely. So we know that's true. We know that's true around drugs out in the world, right? We know that that's true around behaviors around driving out in the world. Like we know that in the world, right, white people are not getting the same consequences for the same behaviors, right? So that is happening inside of our schools, and the metal detector, right, is another expression of that. It's another expression of these are the kids we don't trust and these are the kids we do. Remember when we talked about segregating? It has to do with who we value, who we give dignity to, and who we don't. That's what it's about. And the thing is that some students are really like, they are saying, I feel criminalized every day, like I'm the problem. Or if I know that I'm not the problem, I'm looking behind me and in front of me and thinking they're the problem, right? And that's what keeps us separated from each other. Instead of feeling like we're a school community
And we need to take care of each other and support each other.
Just to go back to this, that black students are 4 times more likely to be suspended than their white peers. So just like some statistics that I have on the top of my head, as of last school year, 2017-2018, New York City's demographics of students, those 1.1 million students. So 40% of New York City's youth are Latinx. 28% are black. About 18.5% are Asian, and only 15% of students are white. Only 15% of 1.1 million students are white. 28% black, 40% Latino. Now, with the 28% black students that we have in our DOE, 51% of them were suspended last year. And really keep this in mind. Out of the only roughly 30% of students, over half of them were suspended last year, right? And that links to the school to prison pipeline. How we were saying before, in the 1960s, when Black and Puerto Rican students went to these disruptive schools and were pushed out of school to be futurely incarcerated, that's exactly what is happening right now. Our incarceration problem links directly to the public education system, or the education system as a whole. Because if you are being pushed out of the school, if you are being ignored, if the guidance counselors are not there, if the social workers are not there, if you can't talk to your teachers, if you're going through a metal detector every freaking day of the year, and you feel like the entire school is not paying attention to you and is totally ignoring you and any problems that you have, it's a much higher chance that those people are going to drop out of school, or maybe finish school, hopefully, and then be incarcerated. So like, the fact that like the city has like suspended that many students, like is disgusting. Like it's literally disgusting. And like that's why like we have young people that have experienced this, that have friends, family that experience this, that are just in the public school system. We're like, you know what? Like that's messed up. Like that shouldn't be happening that way. And we want to change that, and we want to transform what that looks like. So we at Integrate NYC, young people decided that we want restorative justice and restorative practices. So that means if I got into a fight with Goldie's at school, instead of suspending us both, we will have a restorative circle where students who want to sit down and discuss this with us will be there. And I can bring somebody that's like important to me, like my mom, and he can bring a friend. And we can have this discussion and talk about what's wrong, what's not. If it requires, right, there could be community service, there could be anything else like in the school to help me still stay in school and realize what I did is wrong. Instead of sending me home for a week to do what? To stare at the sky, to get lost in my own business. Like you don't want to be pushed out, because even the more times that you're pushed out of the school, or every time you're suspended, it is very likely you are going to get suspended again and again and again. So that's just the school system pushing you out. So we really want to work on like young people transforming what that looks like to keep all of us in school, so that we can all get to where we need to be. Thank you. So in 2015, 2016, this is Park Slope Collegiate. It's a high school in Brooklyn, and that school had metal detectors, and the students in that school did not want the metal detectors anymore. They felt totally criminalized. They were like, I'm not with it, it's taking me too long to get to class, I don't feel like myself. They got their metal detectors removed and painted a mural in their school. And like if you even, I know it's small, but like it's kind of like these students pushing the metal detector off a cliff. But that's kind of like some projects. And then this year, we're working with Teachers Unite on actually implementing restorative justice into our curriculum. Last but not least, representation. So this is a quote from Wesley, who's a student at a Long Island public school. He said, "You have that teacher you can relate to. One of these people who look like me, a young black male like me. I know that if I say something about the experience I have as a black male, he will understand me." So while 83% 61% of New York City students are Asian, Black, and Latinx. Only 39% of teachers are. This is last year's demographics. We have 16% of Asian students and only 6% of Asian teachers. 27% of Black students and 18% of teachers. 41% of Latino students and only 15% of Latino teachers. 15% of white students and 58% of white teachers. But it's not America, right? Because that's not what America should be, quote unquote. And that's why we have young people that are like, we're not going to ignore the problem or say that that's just how it is. Because no, that's not just how it is. It's not supposed to be like that. It never should have been like that. So we actually have the knowledge, experience, creative people to say, you know what, we're going to stop this. And that's kind of what we're doing now. So like, just like briefly, like, I like to share my personal experience because I've like learned that sometimes it aligns with a lot of others. But like, my public school experience, I went, like I said, to predominantly white schools, but like I was the only student of color in my class. And I'm not even like that dark compared to like the other students, but I looked so different from all of them, right? I didn't have a teacher that looked like me until the 10th grade. I didn't have a Latina teacher until the 10th grade. I didn't see an Arab teacher until the 11th. And like, those are two of my identities, right? So obviously, like, it would have been so much more impactful if I've seen them at such a younger age. If I've had role models in the classroom that looked like me at such a younger age. Like, I didn't have to wait to get to the 10th grade in order to have a teacher that looks like me, in order for me to like be taught about my history and my culture and people like me. And that's why we fight for like representation in schools, because there should be teachers of all backgrounds, right? Teachers that identify as Black, as Latino, as Asian, as white, as within the LGBTQ community, right? Within like all different groups, so that we can all learn from each other and say, yeah, I had a teacher that was gay, or that is gay, or I had a teacher that's from Ecuador, I had a teacher that's from Israel, I had a teacher that's from Ghana, right? And like, teachers are literally superheroes. Like, they're the people that are educating generations to come. But if they all look white, what progress are we making as New York City or as America overall? If all of our educators don't represent our stories. So that's kind of why we're really pushing for teachers that represent everybody in every aspect. Because like, even like, I know students that are part of the LGBTQ community, and they feel like they can't talk to anybody because none of their teachers have openly identified with it. And that's why they stay in the closet for so long, right? Maybe even longer than they wanted to. So it's just really bringing that representation into the schools, that we can all learn about each other in such a respectful way. So we like partnered with NYC Men Teach. Have you guys heard of that?
Yeah.
Oh, you remember? Awesome! Shout out to you! So NYC Men Teach is like, came out not too long ago, I think. It's kind of like an initiative to get men into the classroom, right? We definitely have much more female educators than we have male educators. And that's also impactful for boys and for girls, because like, you would even tend to see that, like, I study sociology, so I learned a lot about this, but like, you would see in like elementary schools, like, it's always women that are like nurturing kids, that are always educating kids, and like, men are never really pushed to be with children. They're always pushed to be outside doing something else, providing for the family, right? Instead of actually like, yeah, you can actually like lead the future generation. So it's really encouraging men of color to really be in the schools and educate children, because they aren't as much as they should be. So real representation. So young people need to be partners in making the policies that affect them. We stand for youth as decision makers at local, state, and federal levels. And I really emphasize on youth because this happened to us. This is going to be happening to our siblings, to future generations, right? And it's really up to us to transform that. We can't keep having no offense to older people, but we can't really be having a bunch of older people making decisions for us. Like these are affecting us. Why don't we change it? Why don't we design that policies? Old people have been leading this country for too long, and look at who's president. Look at our system. It's really envisioning what us as young people in New York City can really do and what we can make of ourselves and of our school system and of our city as a whole. So show your support by signing our student constitution on real integration. You can go right there and do it now. It literally takes you 30 seconds. But this is really impactful, right? Because every time you sign or somebody else signs, that's more people on board with us. That's more people supporting us. And if we just get stares, then we won't really be pushing. We wouldn't be pushing forward as much as we should be. So it's really if you could sign our student constitution, that's beautiful. If you want to share it, that's also beautiful.
So we have a youth council meeting here that every other month. So our next one is going to be February 8th. So if you're interested in becoming part of this work, to come and meet that whole team that you saw, to be part of creating this change with us, you can come there on February 8th. And Goldies is here, and he is going to be able to support and connect you. But if you're someone who's really inspired by this, really passionate about this, after this presentation, come up to Goldies to say I want to be part of making this real at Hostos, because we're talking about making sure that colleges and high schools around the city are connected to this work. And I'm curious, just from a few people, maybe folks who haven't shared as much yet, of those 5 R's, was there what really spoke to you? What really made you feel we need to do that? We need to make change in that area. The enrollment, the resources, the representation of teachers, the relationships between students, the restorative justice. What spoke to you? Restorative justice, yeah. Why?
I had an incident where I got involved and I went into the church, but I know I was wrong. And after I saw the judge, he charged me $118. So this lady came and she was white. She was from Canada. She was well dressed, well beautiful, clothing, everything else. She got to the judge and they dismissed her case. And he did the same thing.
You literally saw that injustice right in front of
He
you.
came and spoke to me and told me, in her situation, what should she do? Because she didn't speak English and I had to explain to her the different steps she had to go to. So by the time she saw the judge, she came and told me that they dismissed her ticket. I said, look at this. I'm ending up paying $118 and she doubled down and she didn't pay no money.
Crazy.
That's unjust.
Totally.
Yeah, so you see these things happening all the time.
Yeah, and that's happening in the classrooms, right? Where the kids are feeling the exact same way. We have to change that. From the classroom to outside. Yeah, beautiful. Totally. Totally.
I'm still mad about it.
Yeah.
I stopped driving my car.
Yeah, no, and it's wrong. It's wrong. And there's a real question of how do we change that? She doesn't have the consequences, she doesn't have the same consequences for the same actions. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Any other all the R's connected with you, inspired you? Made you think, oh, we should change that? Yeah. Resources, yeah, why? Yeah, to have the support with, right? To have the support with the things you really need and to have the resources to actually do that. It's huge, yeah. Yeah, these are the things that we actually need to know, right? But instead we're learning things we don't need to know, for sure, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it should be fair for, other schools to have the gym and the music, because if they would have those, especially the gym, all of that works with the brain, and that would help them, get their maths.
Totally. Right, it's not just extra, it's actually part of being a whole person. It's actually, and why do we care so much about a test score, but we don't care about, the creative and collaborative things that happen in music and art, when really in life, collaboration is gonna be even more important than what you got on your, 7th grade state test, right?
Why do they have it in those devices? Why do they have?
You know what, that is a great,
Why do they have?
So I have to tell you one thing that we've been talking about a little bit, right? Is like part of the issue that we were talking about when we talked about metal detectors was like, okay, if you really think they're gonna make kids safe, then let's put them in every school. It's either all schools or no schools, not the some schools that have black kids, right? Not the some schools that have Latinx kids. It's all schools or no schools. But I promise you right now, if we said all schools had a metal detector, those white parents would be right there knocking down the door saying, no way is my kid gonna experience that. Now, black parents and Latinx parents have been saying that too, they just aren't listened to in the same way, right? But I'm just saying, it's such a good point. If it didn't matter, then let's take it out of all schools. If sports aren't important, then nobody should get sports, right? Or if one sport is enough, then every school gets one sport. That's not actually what we want. We want a vision for the future where everybody gets to play all things. But I think you bring up a really powerful point, right? Anybody else? One more.